You're dead and supposedly God asks you for one good deed from your life for him to disregard your sins. What would you present to him as your most sincere kind moment? Ol Hobo Jeff was a homeless guy near me. I used to pull over and he'd come up to my car and chat. Sometimes we'd go across the way and I'd buy him a meal. He was on M and I always offered to take him to and help him get into detox. After a couple years he finally accepted my offer. When he got out I gave him a job. And about 5 years later he asked me to be his best man. I always encouraged him to find a better job with benefits and stuff. And last year he went to tech school and became an aircraft welding inspector. God, respect. One of my friends, who I've known since 4th grade and have been friends with since 5th grade, has told me that I'm the only person that was consistently nice to him and friends with him. He was autistic. We all suspected it, but he wasn't officially diagnosed until we were in 9th grade. Had an abusive family that made him do all the housework and then leave the house if his siblings had friends over. They were really poor, and he was tormented by other students and even the teachers throughout elementary school. He was extremely suicidal and he said multiple times that I was the only reason he didn't kill himself. We just graduated high school together and this will be our first year apart, as we're going to different colleges. But I genuinely believe he can make it through anything now. He got much better in the past 2 years and he's very intelligent. I believe he will go on to do great things, and I'm proud of myself for getting him through his extremely tough childhood. This deserves more upvotes. You're a wonderful person. I pulled 3 children out of a flooded river. Full story. I was 18 and we were on a church field trip to a campground on a small river. The park rangers had warned us that the lake upstream had received heavy rains over the last few days, so the dam floodgates were going to be open to release the pressure. However, we were assured that the floodwater would not arrive until after the park closed at 8 p.m. So, we took the kids to the river and they had fun splashing around. The water was only about a foot deep and slow moving, so it was as safe as a water park. I was wading in the middle of the river when I turned around and suddenly the water was over my knees and moving much faster. The children started screaming and parents started yelling as all the little kids were swept downstream. The water got up to my waist and it swept me away as well. 2 kids were floating nearby, so I grabbed them and walked over to the riverbank. Then I grabbed some tree roots and held on for dear life, because the riverbank was steep and muddy and I couldn't lift the kids out. While this was happening another kid floated by, so I yelled, "Hold on to the kids at the tree roots," and I lunged out and snagged the 3rd kid. Then we simply held on to the tree roots until several adults on land formed a human chain and pulled us up the riverbank. Luckily, at the end of the day no one was harmed, but it was a very scary situation. When I was 20 I was the sole carer of my disabled then 16-year-old brother, after his father, not mine, kicked him out because he wasn't able to deal with his needs. For 2.5 years I cared for him, took him to medical appointments, put all my time and energy into him, showed him all the love he deserved and all he was worth, something his father never did, all while completing a double degree at university. He was a suicidal, depressed and anxiety-ridden child who pulled half his hair out, who started fights with me, with teachers, with his peers over nothing, who broke his hand punching a wall because of how angry and stressed he was. Now he's a young man with a head full of hair and a smile that never leaves. He is completing his education, doing an apprenticeship. He is his school captain and is learning how to adapt for the future with his needs. He has learned it is okay to feel, to cry, to want to be held. He knows now his worth, that he deserves to be loved, and that although people can be really crappy towards him, there are people out there that would sacrifice anything for him and not abandon him. He has learned that he matters, and I am proud of the fact that I was the one that managed to teach him that. Your brother is so lucky to have someone like you. A young woman at my last job had just started and was basically penniless until the next payday. Her car's starter died that morning in the parking lot. I drove to the only parts store that had a starter in stock, roughly 30-mile drive, bought the starter. That led to an interesting conversation with my wife, drove back to work, and installed the new starter out in the parking lot. There's a reason I keep a decently stocked tool bag, jack stands, and wheel chocks in my car's trunk. She sat, ugly crying, in the driver's seat for a few minutes afterward because it probably would have cost easily upwards of $300 to $400 to have it done at a garage. I took a nap in the driver's seat of my car cause I was wiped out between finishing a 3 12-hour shifts and that. I never want to change the starter on a Chrysler minivan with a Mitsubishi V6 ever again, but goddamn I'd do it again if I had to. I won't lie, though, it wasn't a reaction to her car not starting that made up my mind. It was the 2 car seats in the back. I can think of a handful, but not many that's purely sincere, but probably the one I currently have in memory is when I went for a walk to the store and expected rain, so I brought my umbrella. Saw someone else leave his house with his doggo, then it started raining cats and dogs and I jogged to catch up to him. Lucky for him he was also heading to said store, so I shared my umbrella the whole way. The time I reinterpreted policy and corrected the resulting error in a family's food stamps to issue them $1,800 in grocery money a week before Thanksgiving. Bro, you definitely go straight up there. Good person. Honestly, if I were in this situation, I'd say, I didn't do any of my good deeds for self-serving purposes and am therefore declining to answer. I mean, theoretically, God would know all the good things I'd done already on account of being omniscient. So this would have to be some sort of test, right? I used to work at a hipster coffee shop that was open until 3 AM. I was hanging out there on the back patio after an earlier shift because my girlfriend at the time was working late. I remember it being a weekend and this was in a pretty hopping downtown area with lots of bars. This random girl shambled to her car park near the cafe. We didn't really notice her except once she was in her car she kept randomly honking her horn. Eventually myself and a couple regulars went to check up on her. She was continuously passing out and hitting her head on her horn and waking herself up. It took about 10 minutes of talking to her to get her to unlock her door. She was absolutely incoherent and could barely get her hand to the lock. We helped her get into her backseat so she could lay down. Eventually someone who knew her, but not very well, showed up drunk. He came with her cause they have mutual friends. He only remembered her having one drink. This guy was really weird and kept wanting to party and hang out and didn't seem too concerned for her. Eventually her boyfriend shows up with the rest of their group and he was pissed off because she was surrounded by a bunch of guys and she was wasted. He wouldn't even listen to us telling him that she's most likely been drugged. The first random friend almost tries to fight him over this. The boyfriend and his friends just flicked off at this point. So my friends and I kept looking for her car keys in her purse and car until I finally figured out she must have them on her. And I noticed that she has one of those cars that start when you push a button. The acquaintance guy she came with said they lived near each other, but she picked him up and he didn't know where exactly she lived. So I hop in her car, with weird dude, and the passed out girl in the back seat. By the way, she puked in the driver's seat, and drive the guy home while MLY friend followed us in his car. On the way I'm talking to the almost passed out girl asking for her address and getting weird numbers and rambling out of her. As we approached the weird guy's house she finally said street corners that were nearby and numbers that sounded like an address. I put it in my phone and found out it was a few streets away. I dropped the guy off who was more concerned that she couldn't crash at his place than he was about her. I got to the address the girl said, and with an energy she hadn't displayed all night she hopped out of the car, unlocked her house, and ran inside. My friend and I followed her awkwardly to see her laying in her bed near another bed with someone sleeping on it. My friend drove me back. We didn't say a word to anyone. I doubt the girl even knows who I am or has any memory of me or my friends. She was lucky it was us that found her and not her boyfriend or the weirdo she came with, or her so-called friends that straight abandoned her. If that were me, I would track you down just to hug you. You are awesome. The time I got back from trick-or-treating and it was really late. Knock on my door and I answered it to find a little boy with his mum wanting candy. We didn't buy any, so as my parents said we didn't have any. Seeing the boy let down, I ran to get my candy back and grabbed 2 handfuls and gave him some. Stupid, I know. Only thing I could think of. Well, that's as sincere as it gets. Great job. Woman was sitting in the waiting room at my doctor's office. She was in her 50s. I'm in my late 30s and have my infant son with me, sleeping like an angel in his carrier. We get to chatting. I'm a therapist and naturally good at getting complete strangers to open up, even when I'm really not trying. And she tells me how she never wanted kids, and then had cancer 10 years ago that resulted in having a complete hysterectomy. Stranger, it's so strange. I never wanted them and I don't regret that I didn't have them. But I still feel sad about it. It's stupid and doesn't make sense. Me, I don't know you, but I think it makes perfect sense. Whether or not you would have made the choice to have children, you had that choice stolen from you. You can mourn the loss of the option to have kids, even if you wouldn't have taken that option. This woman wept and held my hand until the MA came to get me. She thanked me profusely for helping her finally understand why she had been so sad all these years. I was totally humbled and felt bad that I had said something that was just obvious to me but touched her so deeply. My most profound experience as a healer, and it wasn't even in my professional capacity, just as a human being sitting there with another human being, witnessing and naming the sadness. A tradition that my dad started me on when I was a kid. Every year on Christmas Eve we go to a hole-in-the-wall restaurant, the kind that doesn't get frequented often or one where we know the waitstaff barely gets tipped. During the meal, anytime the waiter/waitress comes up, we'll strike up a conversation which ultimately gets to why do they have you working tonight. Usually we're told that they don't have any family around or they really needed the money so they couldn't take it off. Once the check comes, we pay the total then slip at least $50 under one of the plates. The largest I've seen my dad leave was about $400. We did this every year until about 4 years ago. Now it's my turn to carry on the tradition. When we were kids, and my little brother wants to play Mario Bros with me, I would actually plug in the Player 2 controller and have him play Luigi even though he would die in like 5 seconds. I would just teach him little by little until he can be better. Now, I can say he is better than me at everything, and I'm proud of him. Yeah, I remember those days. And when they beat you for the umpteenth time that day you remind them that you taught them to play, and they reply what? You did no such thing, liar. Anyway, I will thrash you anytime now. And you sit there smiling, trying to remember how they became so good. I sat outside the door of a car that auto-locked, only it locked with the keys still in because the back door not a front door was opened then closed. Car was running, no worry about overheating. Locked the baby in the car. Mom, I think first time mom, is freaking out. I was at work but just grabbed my phone, called the non-emergency police line to my university which is across the street cause they'll be faster than the actual city police. I stayed with the mom until the kiddo was free. Manager actually got worried that I got ran over again. That's a totally different story though. University police arrive happy to help. Pop the lock. And this mom is feeling so much better. We gave her a discount in the store and sent her and baby on their way. There was a cat that I nicknamed Bagel that was a stray and lived on a street near me. After about a week of visiting her every few days I realized how frail she was. I convinced my parents to drive to the street and take her to the vet. At first she wouldn't let me pick her up but we drove around the street one more time and she ran after the freaking car. We took her to the vet and learned that she was 11 years old. I got my mom to take her home and we kept her for about a year before she died of liver failure. Rip Bagel, you were the best. I'm sure she appreciated it, buddy. I held the door open for a lot of people. I helped a friend with physics stuff. I gave another friend a motivational speech. Am I good yet? God asked for one good thing, man. Random woman at a gas station, obviously upset with a flat tire. Baby in the car. Typical useless gas station staff shrugged their shoulders. I was going to be late for work with a totally unsympathetic boss waiting for me. But after a surprisingly intense internal struggle I said FK my boss and changed the latest tire for her. Still got to work on time. Still got yelled at because I wasn't there 10 minutes earlier. Since then I've gotten a lot older, and I'm much less accommodating when it comes to boss holes and much more willing to take the time for a random act of kindness. You have gained a power, eternal thankfulness from her. After being punched, kicked, cursed and spit at repeatedly, I still do my utmost best to ensure the demented man I'm looking after has it the best he can. As someone whose grandfather went through a dozen caretakers due to dementia-induced abuse, you get my vote. I was walking back to my car from work. I was working nights. I see a guy struggling with his car, out of petrol. The guy has no cash on him until his unemployment benefits. I helped him push his car into a nearby street, asked the owner of a house if we could use their driveway for a few moments, walked to a nearby petrol station, Bought him a fuel can and filled it. That was the last of my own money for the week. Got him on his way. At the end of the week when I got paid, I bought a nice box of chocolates and gave them to the homeowner that let us use their driveway. If that's not good enough, I guess I could always tell him the other story about helping to save a rich addict's life that had OD'd in his car. Your backup story sounds like it should be your main one. I went to Walmart last year for groceries. I'm a college student, so I'm kinda broke. Back in the parking lot, there was a woman standing by a dumpster with a sign asking for food or money. I walked up to her and offered to buy her some groceries. She immediately thanked me and we walked inside together. She got some items and asked me if she was allowed to get a bag of chips. A $1 bag of chips, and she teared up when I said to get whatever she wanted. As we walked through the store, she maybe got $20 worth of food. I learned that her daughter lived 45 minutes away and had just given birth a few months ago, but this woman had never met her grandchild because she had no gas money to give someone to take her there. At the self-checkout, I got $20 cash back and gave it to her. I told her to go see her grandchild, and then I went and got my groceries. I don't know if she actually needed the money to see her grandchild or if she brought something else with it, but I haven't told anyone about it. It wasn't necessary for anyone to know. I didn't PPST it to social media to get credit. I just chose to help a fellow human being in need. I hope we will all do that one day. I read something or heard something somewhere that said it's never really our business to question why people need help, because you never really know what that person is going through. Stories like this make me happy and help to restore my faith in humanity. I am glad you were able to help that woman in her time of need. At my granny's funeral, my older brother was really struggling when they started playing a lullaby she used to sing to him when he was little. I quietly moved along the pew to be right next to him and held his arm to try and give him some sort of comfort. He refused my offer of my spare granny handkerchief. She was known in the family for her love of a good hanky. Everyone would be given a beautifully embroidered one every birthday, Easter, and Christmas. I brought several to the funeral. It might not be done grand gesture like some others in this thread, but I'm only young and I don't see many opportunities to help people in big ways. Eventually I will, and I'll take the chance. For now, though, I think the smallest, quietest things are the most powerful in a hard time. I helped collect and donate 3,000 euros for kids' Christmas gifts for kids in need. Gave them to Firehouse 61 in Los Angeles for them to distribute. They left my son play on the fire truck, and I got to do the hose on the fire hydrant. The 2 times I pulled my mom out of an active dope house while she was OD'd, I was an officer in uniform. She had been missing for 3 days. I took her to the hospital and was told that she wouldn't pull through. I stayed with her. My brother proceeded to sell her meds and have a party. She pulled through. While in the hospital, he went to the hospital and tried to strong arm money from her. I had him banned. She recovered. She lives with me today. Hope she stays with you for a long time, sir. One time in a toy store, I noticed a girl wanting a toy that was at the top of a shelf, but both she and her grandmother were too short to reach it. They hadn't noticed me, since I stood around the corner, and I pulled one such toy from the back of the shelf and placed it on the ground, then went to look at the other toys at display. The two go around the corner, the girl visibly sad, and then they notice the toy. I didn't say anything. The girl grabbed the toy, screamed with joy, and the two hurried to the cash register after the elderly woman thanked God for this gift. Also, whenever I eat at a restaurant, I make an effort to leave my table in the condition I'd like to find it. After all, who am I to judge how much the staff has to do, right? Same with hotels and such. Basically, every time I am somewhere where people would normally clean up after me, I do what I can to not make their job any harder than it needs to be. Then there is that time I saved a small dog from my neighbor's dog. I got my arm chewed up pretty badly, and if I hadn't worn my jacket they probably would have bitten right through my right wrist's main artery. I am no doc, but that probably would have killed me. My pulse was pretty intense after that, and mixed with the heat, I passed out multiple times, and I honestly don't know what would have happened if I hadn't managed to open the freezer before I passed out the last time, because I woke up in my own spit 2 hours later. But the important thing is, the smaller dog is fine. I saw him walk past me a few weeks later, and there were no signs of any injuries. Her owner was an elderly lady, and I don't know what would have happened if she had lost her dog. I didn't mention anything. I mean, the idea of a good deed is that very good, not that the one doing them gets praise, right? Nothing I could ever do would qualify. If I could, then Jesus died for nothing. That's the point. Paid in full by the only one who did nothing wrong. I bought a new scarf and gloves while in New York right before Christmas. The evening was extremely cold. As my daughter and I were walking past Saks Fifth Avenue, we walked past this woman all curled up trying to avoid the wind. She had a little cup out for change. Something told me to turn around. I bent down and I put my scarf on her. Then I took her hands and put my gloves on them. I asked her to look at me. She was ashamed. Embarrassed, I'm not sure. We finally made eye contact and I asked her how she got to this place. I followed a guy. We looked at each other for what seemed like a while, but I'm sure was not. I said some private things to her and then I left. I want to ask God if she is okay. Thanks to you, she's more likely to be. Back when I was doing pretty well financially, and also partying too much, I'd leave $50 to $100 in homeless people's pockets while they were sleeping. Looking back on it, they might not have ever realized. Drunk smash does dumb things. I don't like bringing this up as it gives me vague flashbacks, but my friend Richard is alive today because I did my absolute best as a 15-year-old socially awkward anus talking him through a suicide attempt. He made it to hospital, got out a few days later, and still thanks me every now and then for being there for him despite what happened. In his words, me doing that is how he knows I am a true friend despite definitely having my own flaws, and I'm definitely a keeper, and I feel the same. Me helping saving my friend's life is the kindest deed I can think of. A lot of similar stories, definitely the most important ones. I don't know, but the time I paid $50 for a pregnant dog so she wouldn't be bought by some unscrupulous person who would sell her puppies and dump her, that's one of my best moments, I think. I raised them with her and we had all of them adopted out to good homes through a no-kill, highly respected 80-plus-year-old dogs refuge, and they will all have been vet checked, microchipped and sterilization too. She was a beautiful pup, less than 1 year old, and her 7 puppies were just adorable. Other people would have sold them for $1,000 each. She was a purebred something, I can't remember right now, who got pregnant to the neighbor's purebred collie. It's one of my favorite achievements, but really, I don't know what else God would have to tell me, because I don't know. For what it's worth, fostering puppies is one of my favorite things in life. You saved the lives of 7/8 dogs. Always a win. During my first year of grad school, I was competing against 2 other students for a research position within a lab we all fancied. Near the end of the second month, one of the students missed class. Said he overslept, but then he began missing his lab hours. We lived in the same complex, so I started waking up early 3 days a week to bring him coffee. It was clear he was depressed and needed to know he was important to others. This went on for another 2 months. Then after bringing him coffee and after class he didn't come to lab. We were actively competing for this lab position, but him missing gave me a terrible feeling. So I pulled the fire alarm of our building, so I had a mostly guilt-free escape from the lab to go check on him. His car was at his apartment, but he wasn't answering his door. I banged on his bedroom window but no answer. I called him repeatedly but no response. I grabbed a big rock from the garden outside and went to break the window. BC at that point I was pretty sure he had committed suicide. Right as I pulled the rock back to break it, he opened the door. He gave me the runaround saying that he had fallen asleep. He was selected for the lab we competed for, but a few months later we were out getting some drinks and he told me I saved his life. To this day, it's the single most proud memory I have. One word to describe your actions: selfless. When I was about 13-14, my mother had been raising money for charity, Help for Heroes if I recall correctly. Someone decided to steal the plastic tub of cash with all the donations in. She was understandably upset and crying about this, so I went upstairs, packed all my DVDs and games etc into a bag, and traded them into Blockbuster. Came home and gave her the money. I'm not sure if I came anywhere near what was taken, but I'd probably throw that moment out there. Not all heroes wear capes. He's God. He should already know. Besides, it would probably be something I don't even remember or think not much of. Sometimes what we do does not look like much to us, but can have a huge impact on someone else, be it good or bad. So, try not to be a dong to each other. Not a huge thing compared to the rest on this thread. I have a friend. She is awesome. The kindest person I have literally ever met. Like a sister to me. I'd lie down in traffic for her. We were both music majors in college. She got her degree in music ed and after school she started a job at a low income school. She loves it and it's a whole giving back to students who have nothing thing. But it's super taxing. She told me once she cries during lunch almost every day. In school she played an instrument in orchestra and played acoustic guitar in a folk band. After school she bought a used electric guitar and amp. She started writing lyrics and guitar parts and asked me if I'd help her complete them. I called a drummer friend. We got together and started putting them all together. They sound super awesome. More arc, heavy drums, guitar distortion etc. Different than what she used to do. She saved up some money for a new amp and that was really awesome. On one practice before the first recording session she says there is something weird going on with her guitar and the screws connecting the neck to the body were rusting and coming loose so we tightened them. I called a friend of ours who had moved out of town and we discussed buying her another guitar for her birthday coming up and to congratulate her on finally coming up with her own music. We're super proud of her. The guitar she bought used as a Mexican Fender Strat which is the low end model. Not a bad guitar but not great. We thought maybe we can get her a Mexican Fender Tele so she can have a second guitar to record the next part of her album. Then we thought we should get her an American Fender. Double the quality and also double the price. We then hatched the plan to ask all her closest friends and family to pool in money to get her this guitar. We said anything you can give helps. The more we come up with the nicer guitar we can have. We raised $1,250. I went to her house where her boyfriend, now husband, was expecting me and they were watching a movie. I came inside and she said, "Why are you here?" "Hey, I'm here for you. We're going to Guitar Center to get you a new guitar." After being confused I told her all the people who pitched in and that they are proud of her for doing her own thing and overcoming so much. This is weird to say but I'll never forget her tears of joy and excitement. She was overwhelmed. We walked into Guitar Center and she saw an American Fender Tele that was in a beautiful color. She took it off the wall and didn't touch another guitar. It was too pricey but we found a basically new one used. It came a week later. We recorded the rest of the album with that guitar and released it 3 months later. That's the nicest thing I think I've ever done. Bringing those people together to get her something nice. She's super happy with it and I'm super happy with the album we recorded. It sounds great. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.